Islamic art and the beauty of Islamic ritual and the beauty of Islamic art is something that obviously for a photographer is going to attract you. Here we go. And when I was in Kuala Lumpur, not knowing exactly why I was there, and I saw the women walking into the National Islamic Center, and after I looked at that picture for a while, I thought, I have a cover. Now I just need a book. We talked this morning about the locus of the Islamic world being in South Asia and the distortion that Indonesia here brings into our study and our interest and understanding of the Islamic world because of the numbers of Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world. 90% of the citizens of Indonesia are Muslim. We have over 200,000 or 200 million believers in Indonesia. So interestingly, Islam is the predominant faith of Southeast Asia, a land that we usually associate with Buddhism. And the several faces of Islam. I'm afraid this is the Islamic militant is the stereotype version. And there is, along with this resurgence in the Islamic faith that I found in Southeast Asia, there is some extremism. We've seen sects like Jemaah Islamiyah associated to some extent with Al-Qaeda. But I preferred to try to find how Islam is practiced in everyday life by that wide swath of people who have many identities, whether it was young women at prayer in an Islamic boarding school outside of Jakarta, to the beauty of Islamic architecture, the largest mosque in Southeast Asia in Kuala Lumpur. And how do we get these things? Actually, the best view was from the front yard of the Sultan of Selangor. And I actually knocked on the guard shack and asked the guards if I could set up my tripod on the Sultan's front yard. Gaining access to the Islamic world is for those of us who are not Muslims, presents a myriad of problems, whether it's our nationality, in my own case, the big fat white guy with a camera, the suspicions that you are, as a journalist, you must have some connection to the intelligence agencies of your country or something. I wanted to photograph Friday prayers in the National Mosque in Jakarta, the Istiqlal Mosque, and if the Indonesian president usually leads these prayers. And it took me about 5 days to get the permission to do this. But people at prayer, the solemnity of prayer was important to me to see in all of its permutations, the prayer cap. And sometimes we violate cultural boundaries in an effort to get our story. In Brunei, the sultanate on or the small country, I should say, on the northwest corner of the island of Borneo, I noticed at the women's side of the National Mosque, this mother and her children were washing in preparation for prayers. And the mother motioned me over and said it was fine to make pictures. And ultimately, the bearded ones chased me out. One of the reasons I had a fatwa here, I organized this along mosques and schools and villages and so forth. After prayers in the National Mosque in Kuala Lumpur, a great many men, many of whom are civil servants, use that time to also take a nap after Friday prayers. And I simply photographed something that everybody knows about, but it's a bit of a taboo, and these civil servants should be back in their offices. I sat down with the mullahs to help me understand Islam better. This was, I think, in Penang in Malaysia. And I keep going back to the beauty that I, as a visual journalist, find so often. Unfortunately, this is the great mosque in Bandar Aceh at the northeast tip of the island of Sumatra. It was destroyed in the tsunami of 2005. But inside that mosque, again, a little girl and her mother with their prayer shawls, and to try to give you that sense of the beauty and the humanity of the practice of the faith was certainly something I tried to do. The oldest mosque in Singapore, the incredibly prosperous city-state in Singapore, and I was invited in for the breaking of the fast during Ramadan and asked to sit next to the mullah as he read from the Quran. And I found, for me as a visual journalist, and students, if they're here, have heard this so many times, is that our job, among other things, is to provide readers and viewers with intimacy, to take our readers and our viewers to places that they themselves cannot go. I think that that's the hardest thing for us to do as visual journalists, and certainly something that I strive for in my work in Rangoon, or Yangon, the capital of Burma. I sat through Friday prayers and was interested again now in the rituals, the cleansing before one prays. I went to Cambodia, which is an unlikely spot for many people to think of Islam, but in 1975, when Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge conquered Cambodia and the Americans fled and the Long Nol government imploded, why the Khmer Rouge made the Cham, C-H-A-M, the Cham Muslims, a particular target of their brutal genocide. And as many as 800,000 Cham Muslims were killed. And I wanted to go and see what had become of this community, which fled to, among other places, Olympia, Washington, where there are 200,000 Cham Muslims living today. And the community has come back along the banks of the Mekong River to the north or to the south of Phnom Penh. Islamic architecture, the old and the new juxtaposed against the skyscrapers of Kuala Lumpur. To look at Islamic art, students making a beautiful Quran out of gold leaf. And my students and I talked about the students studying, and I was surprised. We talk about this resurgence in Islam. I was surprised across Malaysia, where Islam is officially enshrined as the national faith in the constitution. The only 60% of the Malaysians practice Islam. That today students are required in the public schools of Malaysia, if they are Muslim, to learn to read the Quran in the original Arabic. There are increasing numbers of Islamic schools throughout Southeast Asia. Persistence is, Jamie Talby is sitting in front of me, she'd probably tell this better than anyone, but persistence is what we do in journalism, among other things. I couldn't get inside this Islamic girls' school, and I suppose a bit like a dirty old man, then stood outside and I would try, at least I was determined to picture the fact that their young women were cloistered in a way inside that Islamic girls' school in Singapore. Across Indonesia, of course, in the mosque, we see children today learning to read the Quran again in the original Arabic.
Support for Voices and Visions comes from the Social Science Research Council, the SSRC, leading innovation in the social sciences and educating the next generation of social science researchers.